Hi, I'm Mary O'Malley, and I'm a GTD coach. And Matt, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Matt Leytman. I'm the CFO of Kinderfarms, and I've done
So,
coaching with Mary.
so Matt and I did some coaching together. Matt, I don't think I know the story of what brought you to seek out GTD coaching.
Sure. A while back, I read the book a long time ago. I think it was when my first daughter was born. I was struggling to keep track of everything in my life, including work. And one of my colleagues at work recommended the Get Things Done method and the book, which did change my life, and really got me, working and thinking about a task management system. But over the years, as I got another daughter added to the family and I took on more responsibilities at work, I felt like I was going away from just the basic foundations of GTD. And I started Googling and tried to think about how do I get myself more in tune with the actual framework and figure out what works for me and what doesn't. Because I knew that there was something that really appealed to me about the method, but I couldn't quite pin my thumb on why it wasn't sticking to where I thought I could be at with this. So that's how I found GTD, and then we got linked up. I think there was an intake or something like that. We got
Mhm.
paired up because we both have young kids and young families, and you've been in professional life like me, and I thought the match was good, and we went from there.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to compare notes and stories on our kids and how everybody was navigating. And we started, I was reviewing our notes for this call, our session notes. You started in the notes app and then we transitioned. Do you remember how that went for you and like what showed up as you began to switch out of notes into Todoist?
Sure. And that was one thing that I knew I could refine, but actually exceeded my expectations of what we figured out together. So I was doing notes in my iPad on iOS, so I can sync it between, I had various devices. And my first question was, I do stuff on the iPad, on the iPhone. How do I get stuff going on my PC? Is that a Windows PC? And you came back with, well, have you ever heard of Todoist? Have you ever heard of this app, which works across all of these and actually is set up much better than Notes to do get things done methodology with the ability to do tasks and projects. I had previously used Trello, I've used Asana, I've used pen and paper and everything in between. OneNote was another one. And I just couldn't get something that was A, easy to use, B, was kind of fun to play with in using GTD. And right away, when we started doing stuff in Todoist, just with the way that it works on iPad and iPhone and on your PC, just a lot better setup for GTD. And I adopted it pretty much immediately after we first met. And then there was a good reference guide that we went through, and from then till now, I don't know, it's been almost a year. I've stuck with it. It's probably one of the only consistent task tools that I've actually not given up on because it pretty much meets everything that I need to do with it. So it's been great. I still use the notes, but my notes now has become more of my in tray or like scratch paper. And my workflow is I pull that note from my iPad or wherever I have it from, and if I have to make it in a task, I actually put it into Todoist, or if I need to do something with it, I actually have some kind of a action around it. And tends to be that I delete most of the notes I end up writing up in my old methods. So I've kind of figured out working with you. I remember I had notes everywhere. Now I have a purpose for every piece of note taking that I do. If it's for reference, it goes into OneNote. If it's a task, it goes into Todoist. If it's a thing I have to remember to do at a time and place, I put in the calendar. And if I have just a bunch of loose notes on my iPad, I can go in there and just go through and see if I need to do something with them, or I can just delete them, which I have been trying to delete.
This is great. And it always makes me laugh because people will ask, like, what tool do you recommend? What tool do you recommend? And I really don't recommend tools until I get to know the person. depends on your context, what you use. You had, an iPhone, but you also had a PC, and then getting to see where the friction was in your system made me kind of lean towards Todoist. And I personally use Trello, but we coach people. We always say here we're tool neutral, and we are. I coach people on everything and anything. But what you and I really worked for was a tool that aligned with the tech you were using, how we were using it, your cognitive preferences. And I was looking for you for something that could evolve. So do you remember you didn't want to link email at first, then started to link email. And then I believe there was also, I wrote down, we had, and this, we'll talk about calendar next, work and personal didn't talk in your systems. And Todoist can allow you to set it up for that, but it also gives you the flexibility. If you change your mind, things can start to connect. So I wonder, I wanted to hear, like, a year later, how's your setup in Todoist? Do you still have work and personal very separate?
Yeah, I do have both separated, but my in tray is commingled. So in my in tray in Todoist, I don't worry about if it's work or personal. I just dump it in there. And it's with regular maintenance and clearing, it's not been too big of a deal really to have the two in there, which before I would have to go and remember, all right, for personal stuff, it's in this area of wherever I put it. And for work, well, it's the email and whatever random notes. So I do have one place to capture the inbox, and then I do separate it out when I go through. Like I'm able to parse out what's work, what's not, and most of the work stuff is quick. I can get it in the work flows, so it doesn't really hang out there long. And then the home stuff, I've got good contacts lists in there. So both live in one app, which is nice. I don't know that I had that before, and I've seen it. Maybe I don't always intentionally go through everything, but I do notice that to-do items get knocked off. So there is something happening where organizing it this way, it doesn't get lost in the ether somewhere where I can't find it. And I don't have to worry about, well, I need to go find my work computer to capture my inbox, because I can just put an inbox item anywhere at any time because I have Todoist on my phone. I don't need to go and log into any separate thing or business thing or personal thing. Even while I'm in the middle of a meeting at work, if I think of something that isn't work related, I can pop it into the inbox in Todoist and get it in the right spot. I know I'm going to check that. So that's definitely helped a ton. And then from a calendar point of view, for sure, I don't know why I didn't think of it. It was a good thing that I can't remember what even triggered it, but I kept my calendar separate. So I would constantly miss some kind of networking call that's not related to work, or some kind of a kids commitment. I needed to go and cross-reference two calendars. One was my work one, and the other one personal. I would just open both up on my screen, or have one phone on this and the laptop on this. And then we worked together and we figured out that you can overlay calendars in Outlook and you can link them up. You showed me how to import Google calendars into Outlook. And now I have everything overlaid into one calendar. And my colleagues at work don't see it, but I can see what I have committed to. So I can go and work around that, or I can put in scheduled blocks in my work calendar so that I don't have conflicts. So I for sure have cut down on the amount of unplanned conflicts or scheduling snafus, because I can see everything at once. And the other thing is the weekly review. I remember also have to open up a bunch of different calendars and lose track of which day, which week is related to what task and what context. Now I can plan my entire schedule more or less in one sitting on the calendar, and I can see, okay, here's my personal things going on, and oh, this board meeting is happening, and I need to plan around both of those things in the same week. It just makes planning a lot go a lot more smoothly with the overlay. So I still kind of do keep everything separate, but in the same system at least. So that
Mhm.
helps a lot in not missing or not overlapping something that shouldn't have been overlapped.
I think it's helpful to be able to change on one screen, see everything, and then just see this one aspect, and then this kind of cross compare and play with how you want to see it. And I think that's really true for parents, particularly parents of young kids, where we are the ones responsible for getting them to the activity, from the activity. We have to be interfacing with our partner or our spouse to who's going to take them, who's bringing the snacks, what, are we taking anybody else? All those things that aren't even on your radar before you have kids. And that's the threefold nature of work. So there's doing, defining, and the unplanned. When you have a lot of unplanned, which when you're a parent, you just do, that's just a part of it. You need to be able to see things quickly to renegotiate. And the other piece is, David Allen talks about it's all work. And it's not like drudgery work. It's all work that is like making our life full and stuff we're choosing to engage in. So some people do like to keep it separate. And I saw that it was going to be really helpful for you to be able to play with how you wanted to see it and not be checking so many places, because it was just such a drag on your working memory. When you went to do the weekly review, it made it so long. That was a big point.
You wouldn't want to even do it because it was so long. You would just then not do it.
Yeah, why would you? Right? I wouldn't have done that. So
Yeah.
like a half day weekly review where there's just several hours of interfacing with cross-referencing calendars. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to fix and adjust that. And then the next question I had is, since we did our coaching, you started a new job, you're a CFO, and how has your system held up throughout that transition? And how did it serve you during that transition?
It's a good question. So I went from a pretty seasoned company that had been acquired by Nestle. That was where I was working at. I was CFO as well there, to a much smaller company, less than 20 people. There's a lot going on, a lot of hats worn across the board. And so just the pace picked up a lot, which is what I was looking for. But I needed a system that would be agile enough to work with that. And I wanted to make sure that I still stayed on top of the principles of making sure I have an in tray, making sure that I don't miss things that need to be converted into tasks, setting up priorities and projects. So in some respects, it just helped with the first 90 days of just getting into the position and organizing myself. And the pace was fast, but the amount of volume to start with was low. So I could properly set it up. Whereas in the last role that I was at, we were putting this system in place while in the midst of a lot going on in practices, good and bad, that I've formed over the years. It was nice to have like a clean slate to start fresh, and it's held up. I've been able to inbox zero my email multiple times, and make sure that I'm capturing things in the right spots and not everything is all over the place. It just has kept me disciplined in my organization and time management, where probably before, when I didn't have the system properly set up, it was what's the priority of the day, and just drop everything and jump on that. And so it's just being probably managing more to um, other like other people's asks or email asks versus my own priorities. Here I've been able to be more on top of my own priorities by keeping the system intact and staying true to it. Even when there's a ton going on, I still have to get the in tray filled in and not keep it in my head. I think that's probably been one of the big things to for me to stay on top of everything that's going on here.
So I have two questions as you were talking that came up. One is, how have the names of your lists changed since you've started this new role? And then the other, choose to answer these in whatever order you want. The other question is, where and how is clarifying and organizing going?
Names of the lists, I think, are the same.
Okay.
I've kept to the true buckets that I like to keep. I have messed around a little bit with where I want to keep agendas. So I've gone from the nature of this work is more remote because the HQ is in California, and then we've got people across the US and myself, I'm in Chicago. So my agendas where I used to keep it in Todoist, I actually keep them as a shared document with my team. So I have one for each person on my team for one-on-ones. So I used to do it more as like, let me tee up what that agenda looks like and then put the agenda into a shared doc. So that's been a tweak, but the names and contexts have remained the same. The system's the same. I really haven't changed much of it, and kept that together. And what was your second question?
Clarifying and organizing. How is that going and where is it taking place?
So clarifying and organizing candidly is probably still ad hoc, not always the same day every week. When I do some time boxing to start my day every day. So I look at my calendar and I figure out what are my meetings, what I need to prep for. I look out the next 3 days and just make sure I'm on top of that. And then I'll slot in, if I have a weekly review, I will slot that in day of or the next day. And that's when I'm going through my inbox for email and I'm going through my notes. I'm going through my calendar and my in tray and my Todoist, and I'm getting that cleaned up and organized. And then the mind map and the just the priority exercise is separate from that. Try to do that once a week. I get a whiteboard. I have a whiteboard app on the iPad, or sometimes I just sketch and I just dump it out for whatever I'm thinking about in my brain. Sometimes it's about the business, sometimes it's about a particular problem I'm trying to tackle. Sometimes they're just shower thoughts that I have to get dumped at some point. So it's not been every Monday I need to do this type of exercise, but I do try and fit in where I can, those clarifying and organizing. And then sometimes I just do bits, like little bits. If I have a couple minutes free, I'll go and try to clarify and organize what I see quickly. Try not to do it all in one swoop. So that's another one thing that you taught me, I think, was just try to not make it such a daunting task. To try to chip away at it and not have like a huge mountain of stuff that you gotta get cleared down on, because it's going to be overwhelming to try to do all at once. So I do the 15-minute timers sometimes, or 20-minute timers, to try to get that unruly list down to something more manageable. And with that, in certain times of the year, it works pretty well. Sometimes it piles up and I do have to have a like a multiple hour catch up session, but it's been pretty solid for sure. There was one time I remember earlier in the year that I had to go and spend maybe 4 or 5 hours just straight up. I got to get all this cleared out, deleted, cleaned up, clarified, and then it was clean slate. So I've seen the impacts when you don't do that, and since then it's been solid. I think I've been on top of it more or less.
That's great. I remember one of the things that we worked on was like, you can clarify and organize in 5, 10, 15-minute chunks a couple times throughout the day. It does not have to be time blocked in your day so concretely. And I'm glad to hear that's still stuck. That's great.
I'm trying to find stuff that I stick to. So that's my mantra for keeping the system going.
Good. Well, Matt, thank you so much for meeting today.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to share best practices. I love the system. Hope it stays with me the rest of my life.
For more GTD resources, visit davidco.com and David Allen's YouTube channel. To explore coaching, email info@gtdfocus.com or visit gtdfocus.com and click Talk to a Coach.